Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Going Mental, where the talk gets very real about real problems. I'm Paul Elam with avoiceformen.com, and I am joined, as always, by Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. Want to say hi, Dr. T?
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so now that introductions are out of the way, we can go ahead and start getting to the meat of the matter. I want to put a disclaimer on this before we proceed. We're going to be talking about the 5 major areas of fear that are experienced by borderline personality disordered individuals, narcissists, and people who have traits heavily along those lines. The techniques for dealing, when we're talking about dealing with really crazy people, we are talking about having to go to levels that we would not normally go in conflict resolution. Are you having trouble there, Tara?
I think I might have had a video window open. I think I found it and closed it. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's called an ESME. Everybody has to commit one sooner or later. Tara just did. But no, I was offering a disclaimer, Tara, that I think that people should understand when we're talking about using people's fears in order to manipulate them. And we're going to be honest, that's exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about controlling people by exploiting their fears. When you say it in that cold clinical language, it can sound very harsh, and it is. Let me say just from the beginning that taking things to this kind of level is never something I would do to try to solve a personal problem with a rational person who was willing to listen to reason or who was at least interested in solving a problem. When we're talking about giving suggestions or making observations about these fears, we are talking about dealing with people where this is the only kind of option is going to work. It is a matter either if you're going to reclaim your life, if you have a crazy in your life that's making things miserable, they don't go away just because you say, I would prefer if you left me alone now. They don't go away even if you get really angry and scream at them to leave you the fuck alone. They don't go away. What they do is they continue to cause pain and inflict problems until you are either broken or until you stop them. That's how it works. So when we're talking about these things, just know we're talking about extreme circumstances, but they're circumstances that happen to people every day, and they get seldom few answers about it. So with that being said, let's get down to do what we're talking about, which is how to, let's identify these fears, and of course I'm going to hand it to Dr. T to do that, and then we'll go do an overview of them, and then we'll take them one at a time and talk about them individually with hopefully some suggestions on how to understand them well enough to use them in order to create more safety and security in your life.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you are involved with a individual who has BPD, borderline personality disorder, is narcissistic, is histrionic, is sociopathic, is psychopathic, or just your garden variety high conflict personality, there are primarily 5 fundamental fears, primitive fears that drive these individuals. 1 is the fear of abandonment. 2 is the fear of oh God, the dog is lying on the sorry. I'm going to get a studio and the dogs aren't going to be allowed in there.
It's a dog's world.
She was lying on the cord about to pull down the computer off the perch I have it on. Stop that. So, okay, the fear of abandonment, the fear of loss of control, the fear of loss of resources, and that could be money, material goods, social status, whatever the individual's currency happens to be, the fear of feeling or appearing inferior or inadequate, and the fear of exposure, public exposure for what she or he is actually like. And they will defend against these fears, even if it means they have to lie, commit crimes, abuse, defame, smear. pull in law enforcement to do their dirty work for them. They can get quite cagey. They can be very convincing when they're telling their side of events, or I should say when they're lying about their side of events. Correction. And if you blink, if you feel sorry for them and don't protect yourself, if you give them the benefit of the doubt and say, you know what, yes, she assaulted me, but I don't want to have the mother of my children arrested. You are being foolish, and you are playing a dangerous game, because she will not say, oh gosh, wow, let me rethink my ways. And that was so nice of him, so I owe him, so I'm going to stop being a spiteful lunatic. No, what she's going to do is see that as a weakness to exploit, and sooner or later the cops are going to be looking for you because she's going to claim that you assaulted her instead of the other way around, or she will set you up in a way such as she'll take your phone, you'll try to get your phone back from her, she'll scream assault, and there you are. So when Paul earlier was talking about, look, we don't recommend leveraging people's fears against them as a matter of course, but in this instance what we're talking about is a matter of your survival. If not your physical survival, it could be maintaining your freedom, keeping the majority of your assets, protecting yourself, protecting your children. So this is serious business, and if you are going to go down this route where you are going to leverage the fears of a sociopath or a borderline against him or her, you can't blink, and you must see it through to completion. And if you can't do that, then you are better off not doing it at all.
Yes, with vampires, if you don't put the stake right through the heart, there's not much point in going after them. I want to go back to something, and then I'd like to, if we could please, Dr. T, to take these fears one at a time and break them down a little bit more, and looking at the circumstances where that might be advantageous to a person who's in trouble with high conflict. But I just wanted to point out, now again, I felt the need, and as I saw you did, to explain to people that when we're talking about these kind of measures, that we're not talking about dealing with everyday people. But you know, there's this funny thing that's occurred to me about borderlines, particularly borderlines and to some degree narcissists, but mainly with borderlines, is that we don't have a problem in this society if Dr. T and I sat down and had a chat about spotting and avoiding pedophiles for people with children. Nobody would have a problem with it. The comment section would not flood with outraged pedophiles who couldn't believe.
We might get a couple, but
we might get a couple, yes, and you will get a couple, and that have you, but they don't come in battalions. The same thing that when we tell people to avoid drug addicts, all the drug addicts don't rush in and try to defend themselves and say, don't you understand, you should understand my stealing because I have a drug problem. You don't get that. But the moment that we take the topic, because there are mental disorders, there are mental conditions, whatever you want to call it, there's states of mind, there's types of personalities that are dangerous to people. And for some reason in this culture, we have permission to talk about one particular range of those behaviors and to say, stay away from those people. They'll harm your children, they'll steal from you, they'll ruin your life if you get too close. But when it gets to the almost sacred borderline personality disorder, people come out of the woodwork as though that you're supposed to accept that it is unfair to them to talk honestly about their conduct. And I just had to throw that out there and just get your reaction to it before we start, because I find this to be, again, an ultimate hypocrisy. And of course I have to wonder, since the perception is that drug addicts and pedophiles are mostly men, and the perception is that borderline personalities are mostly women. Whether or not those things are all true or not, those are general perceptions about those conditions. Is this another case of sexism? Is that we can identify and demonize and tell people to stay away from certain mental conditions as long as they're primarily ones that affect men, but if we get into something that we believe primarily affects women, then we better keep our mouth shut and not say a word?
Well, I think there's that, but with the battalions of individuals with BPD who come in to artillery us aren't just female. Male borderlines do this too, the ones who have been accurately diagnosed. So, my stance on this, which I'll probably get slammed for, but I don't care because it's going to happen anyway.
Oh yeah, before you said what you were about to say, they were all going to be nice to you.
Right. They weren't. No, they weren't. For a very long time, going back to when I was in graduate school, I believed that BPD, diagnostically speaking, is the female version of antisocial personality disorder. Yes, that's what I believe.
I believe it too.
And I believe at the heart of all of the cluster B diagnoses, and for those of you who don't know what cluster B is, if you're new to this channel, that is the cluster of personality disorders in the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistician's Manual. That includes narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic, borderline, and antisocial personality disorders. I believe at the heart of that cluster is sociopathy. I believe that is the through line through all of those disorders. And for me, that means the lack of empathy, the refusal to be held accountable, and the professional victim stance that many of them take when you try to hold them accountable.
You won't get any argument from me about that.
And I want to add to that, and this is something I think we discussed in another show. There's much debate over whether or not borderlines have the ability to have empathy. And I can't remember who it was, but they made a great distinction. There's empathy, and then there's cold empathy. Because if you go onto any BPD forums, etc., you'll read a lot of comments where they're talking about they hurt others because they just have so much empathy that when they feel the pain of others, they have to lash out to protect themselves or something like that. But there's empathy, and then there's cold empathy. And cold empathy is the ability to read others' emotional states and feelings, but you use that to harm them.
And the willingness to harm them, yes.
That's the basis for compassion for them.
And, I think that's always important to make that distinction. To counsel people effectively, you have to have some degree of empathy. But some people have a lot of empathy and can read other people's feelings very well, and they use that as a way to be supportive and understanding toward those people. And then there are the cluster Bs, sorry to say, but it's true, and we're going to talk about it, that see other people's feelings with just as much and even more empathy. They're often highly empathetic, and they read people very, very well. But it becomes a tool for manipulation only. It is not an asset for connection and it certainly has nothing to do with compassion or sympathy. It is simply what Dr. T said, just cold empathy that it gets turned into a weapon. And when you're dealing with cluster B, that's what you're dealing with most of the time. Let's talk about abandonment. Now, I know that I worked. Unfortunately, as you know, Dr. T, chemical dependency work will put you in the company of many a personality disorder.
Oh, yes.
And I've had them give me hateful looks.
On staff and on your caseload.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, eventually the patients get better and go home. Some of them do. I've had them give me dirty looks in groups before because I didn't sit by them, and could tell that they were just steaming over it. And I've experienced in some remote personal ways personalities that are like, What do you mean you have to check the mail? Can't I go with you? We run into this in life. There is, in these people, like if I don't sit by you in the group, or if I don't recognize you or treat you as special, it is considered an attack by borderlines. It provokes their anger and their ire, and that stems, does it not, very much from a really exaggerated fear of abandonment.
I think yes, not sitting by somebody in a group, and if they feel abandoned by that, it can spark rage. I think you're also touching on too is which kind of also touches on their fear of feeling inferior or inadequate, is that you're not designating them as special by sitting next to them. Therefore, they are somehow inferior. But for abandonment, first I want to say, you cannot abandon an adult. You leave an adult. Children and animals are abandoned in cardboard boxes on the steps of orphanages and hospitals. But a grown-up is not abandoned. They are left. However, when you're dealing with these types of individuals, they perceive you wanting to end the relationship as a profound abandonment, and they will do just about anything to stave that off, right down to making suicide threats, threatening to do harm to you in some way, or they'll engage in something called a hoover, which is where they go back to the love bombing, honeymoon seduction stage, and sex you up, or ply you with gifts or promises that things will get better, right down to, again, threatening you, bullying you, intimidating you into staying. And they will do that to ward off these profound feelings of abandonment that go back to childhood. And look, even when they leave you, and this is the really crazy part, they can be the ones to file divorce. They can be the ones yelling at you, get out of my apartment, get out of my life, I want you gone. And if you go,
you abandon them.
You abandon them, even though they're the ones who told you to go, or who initiated the breakup or the divorce. And if you want to make one of these people really angry, give them exactly what they want. At least that's been my experience. But even when they are pushing you out, divorcing you, started another relationship. And this is the crazy one. I have so many guys I work with, and women too, who've been involved with these types, where they have started another relationship, but you are expected to be in a cupboard waiting for them. Should they want some attention? Should the other relationship not work out? Should they want to triangulate you with their new relationship? And by that I mean use you to make the other person feel jealous, insecure, that if they don't do exactly what they want, then they're going to go back to you. So all of this stuff happens when their feelings of abandonment are triggered, and like I said, even if they're the ones who end the relationship, they still perceive it as an abandonment, which is.
And that's why the reason that we wanted to cover these fears too is to talk about whether or not any or all of them are useful in for you if you're an individual dealing with a person like this, and how they can be useful. One of the things, and again, I know the brigade will come in on this, and people will be upset by it, but I'm just simply repeating a fact here. I'm not even telling this as a joke, but what I'm telling you is that for all the years that I worked in the mental health industry, there was a running joke that you don't treat borderlines, you ignore them. And whether that's fair or kind or whatever, I mean, it is a part of that culture. There's an understanding there that any energy you put into one of these personalities, any at all, is going to be sucked up dry. Another running joke we had, and it wasn't meant to really be at anybody's expense, but these were the observations of people doing this work, and what they came up with is that during staffings, which is where all a bunch of professionals get together and they talk about their cases in a circle. Each one briefly touches on their cases, and you've had your staffing. When staffings ended up talking about one person for 20, 25 minutes and everybody else for 2, the one person you talked about for 25 minutes is the freaking borderline every time, because they are expert at occupying space in people's minds and stunting.
You're not there.
Yes, and stunting and pulling antics that keep even attention that they're not seeing focused on them. And we could always tell that. And most of us would raise our hands at some point and say, hey, this is a personality disorder discussion. Let's move on with the rest of our clients and maybe give them the attention they deserve. But so these are the kind of personalities you're dealing with, and in dealing with them, my experience has been that the best tool you have in your box is indifference. In every way you can possibly think of it. I know when somebody's a mother of your children, it's a heck of a lot easier to say than do, or if you're involved with somebody. But if you want a borderline to lose interest in you, even though they're going to rage to try to fight it, and they're going to shit test you some more, and they're going to try different things, you know you can count on that coming. Your consistent indifference to their states of feelings, to their rage, to their sadness, to whatever, is the best way to get them to eventually go away.
That's right. And I want to tie into that something that we discussed in our upcoming book that's on sale for pre-sale right now on Amazon called Say Goodbye to Crazy.
Oh, and I forgot. I'm not near the capitalist pig I think myself to be. I have not put a link to that in the low bar. It is on the sidebar of A Voice for Men right now. You can go there, and I will put a link in the low bar to this after we're done, so that others won't have to go hunting elsewhere. Anyway, commercial's over. Go right ahead, please.
It's something we discussed in one of the chapters that Paul just used different language for, which is indifference, practicing indifference. We have in Say Goodbye to Crazy, we discussed a concept called the 3 Ds, which stands for detach, disengage, and defend. Because that's what you need to do. You need to emotionally detach. Because look, many of these individuals are masterful at emotional manipulation. They're not going to appeal to you with logic or reason or facts. They're going to appeal to you on a very emotional level, to play on your sympathies, to cultivate feelings of guilt within you, or a sense of obligation, or straight up fear. And that's how they manipulate, okay? So you need to be able to emotionally detach from that person. And that doesn't mean hate them, and that doesn't mean don't feel sorry for them, because they are pretty pitiful, but don't let your sympathy be used against you. So emotional detachment, if you can look at that individual as just a bunch of sound and fury, and not have emotional responses to that. And I know that's very difficult for a lot of people, but if you can cultivate that within yourself, it'll make doing what you need to do to rid yourself of this person, to get out of that relationship, whether it's business or intimate or familial. Certainly not easy, but it won't be as difficult or painful. And the other issue that I've just blanked on.
I love it when that happens.
What was it? Detach, disengage, defend. Lost it.
Well,
and I can't remember. Sorry.
And in the last chapter, we'll get to the 4th D, which is destroy. No, just kidding. Although it may feel that way at times as you're reading. No, the whole point of this was that abandonment is an exaggerated, absolute, terrible fear for borderlines. Since it's sad, since they often don't give you any method of reasonably creating safe boundaries or space with them. The way that you do it with them that's going to be effective is to put them on ignore and do the disengage and defend, and the 3 Ds of getting away from them. And remember, while you can never fully, or most people can't do this without feeling anything, you can teach yourself to not show it. And I hate to be saying don't show your feelings, but don't show them to the borderline. If you're screaming, I don't care about anything you say about me, well, you're not exactly displaying indifference. You're not getting,
No.
she knows she's got you then. So what gets her is just, I was just saying what gets her is just ho-hum.
Yeah, well, you just reminded me of my other point, which is any kind of emotional response, negative, positive, incentivizes this individual to persist. So you can be polite. You can rage at them. You can call them names. And in fact, oftentimes they want to provoke a very strong negative response in you, because then they can flip it around and play the victim. They love that. But what you need to understand is when you start to ignore them or start to enforce some other kind of healthy boundary, it's not going to work right away. Something called an extinction burst is going to happen, which means that the behavior is going to get a lot worse, a lot more intense before it goes away. Because it's like a little child who has learned that if he or she throws a temper tantrum, mom or dad is going to give in and give the kid the cookie or the toy. Same thing with this type of individual. They've learned that if they push your buttons long enough, if they play in your sympathies long enough, be annoying in some way long enough, you're eventually going to relent and give them whatever it is they want from you. So if you're not prepared to weather the storm of their crying, yelling, raging, threatening, etc., and you capitulate to whatever it is they want, all you've done is taught them that if they want to get what they want from you, all they have to do is be a bigger nuisance, bigger bully, etc., etc. You can't feed it.
Golden rule there. Don't show your feelings, no matter what they are. I know that sounds like counterintuitive suggestions coming from people with counseling backgrounds, but if you're smart, you will not share your feelings with a borderline acquaintance, partner, otherwise, because again, we go back to the deal. The empathy is high. They use your feelings to read your mood, where you're at, how to play you at the moment. You are not dealing with somebody who hears your feelings and has a compassionate response. You're dealing with somebody that hears your feelings and says, okay, there's my end, to start getting what I want. That's all you're dealing with. And that part can be hard to accept. It can be hard to accept that you've chosen somebody like that. It can be hard to accept that the person that you fell in love with really turned out to be that way. Well, if they're showing all the signs they are that way, and the only way that you're going to get out of that is to, and I use the term abandonment loosely, but to abandon your emotional investment or showing any emotional investment in their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, whatever they're going to do. Your best bet is to put up a wall of I don't care and go on about finding things to do with your life. They will, like Dr. T said, they will retaliate. They will say, I don't believe this, I can beat this, I can make him react. But if it goes long enough without you reacting, they will lose interest and go away. They do it every time, because once it gets firmly in their mind that they cannot control somebody, they do not have interest in them. Now, they may want to punish you on the way out.
They'll drama elsewhere. They have to have the drama. They have to have that emotional feed, that narcissistic supply, whatever you want to call it. So if you cut them off, it's like a parasite. It's going to go find a new host.
Yep. Okay, now what was the second? I think we covered abandonment and a little bit on how to use it. What was the second item on the list of fears, Dr. T?
They say on German trains and at the border, control.
I don't speak German, so you'll have to translate.
Well, it's a cognate. Control, 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 control. Lose control.
They fear loss of control, and of course that does make perfect sense, right? Since the personality disordered individuals are usually prone to living their whole lives about controlling others and having
Well,
other people in your will.
right?
Yep, the loss of that is terrifying. And so the solution to that, again, if your idea is I will call it the right idea, which is if you have a borderline, find the exit. Uh, uh, if you want to get rid of them, another thing is their fear of loss of control. What many men experience, common in relationships, and sometimes with women we would not call borderline, is a slow erosion of their lives and a takeover of it by a partner who doesn't want you to be interested in fishing and doesn't want you to be interested in sports on TV and doesn't want that, wants you here for this and to do that. And sometimes when guys rebel about it, well, the borderline is even more obsessive than average by far on something like that. And so the response in my mind, and Dr. T can correct me, is to really go out of your way to do what you want to do. And to, again, remorseless, careless, this is my life, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Even if she's screaming, I won't be here when you get back, you say, okay, I'll be back around 8 or 9, and you going off out of the driveway, and if she's not there when you get back, then you've won.
Well, typically that doesn't happen. They stay and then they make you pay for it later.
Yes, and they'll even do if you leave, I'll kill myself. We'll get that. And let's stop at that for a moment, Dr. T, because every once in a while, one of these people, either by accident, by taking too many Tylenol, and sure enough, their liver was sensitive to it, and out they go, or even intentionally do kill themselves when they don't get their way. Now, there's the dilemma. Does that mean if they say that I'm going to kill myself if you leave, that you should stay?
No, it means you should call emergency services, 911, if you're in the U.S. If you're not in the U.S., then memorize your country's emergency service number, and you call, and you have the police come, and perhaps she gets taken to an emergency psychiatric stay at the hospital to be evaluated, or she'll lie and say it wasn't serious. But if you are not a trained psychiatric professional and she's expressing suicidal threats or ideation, then the responsible thing to do is to get her help, which doesn't mean you stay in the relationship. It means she goes to the hospital for perhaps a 24-hour observation or longer. And if she wasn't really serious, then she still needs help, because it's not healthy to threaten suicide to prevent someone from leaving you. And she learns a lesson if the cops come, that you're not going to tolerate that kind of emotional blackmail anymore. Now, as Paul said, sometimes they actually do. Sometimes it's an accident because they have staged a suicide scene anticipating that you're going to arrive home from work at 7. But you get caught in a traffic jam and don't get there till 8:30, and you weren't there to rescue them and then feel the appropriate amounts of guilt for her having made the decision to do something so stupid. So no, you don't stay. You get that person, you get the emergency services involved, and let them assess him or her as to whether or not they're really suicidal, and if they are, then they go to the hospital.
Well, let me add something to that, Dr. T, too, just as, and I'm not trying to be cute here, but I'm dead serious. Let's say, for instance, you plan to go fishing, and your partner says, if you leave, I'm going to kill myself. Call the police, just like Dr. T said, and as soon as she's in the back of the wagon, get in your car and go fishing. Go on your trip. Again, I know how cold this sounds, but here's the deal. she'll play the scene of being in the hospital, and why didn't you come see me? I was suicidal and you didn't even come see me. And again, we'll get right back into that cycle. The only way to get this message across to crazy is to get it across first to yourself, that you're not going to play in to any of this manipulation. If she goes in for a 72-hour psych eval, you've got 3 days to fish, and then you can come back and remind her when she gets out of the hospital that you're not going to be manipulated by anything anymore.
Reward and incentivize more of the same.
Exactly.
I've long thought if you want to learn boundary strategies, boundary techniques, if you are in a relationship with one of these individuals or trying to get out of a relationship with one of these individuals or have to maintain some level of contact because there are shared children or it's a sibling or a parent, read articles and books on how to set boundaries for troubled children. No, you can't put...
Isn't that sad? Isn't that just sad?
Well, yes, it is, but many of them are toddlers or even pre-verbal at some points or adolescents in adult bodies. And while you, as I said, while you can't put a 40-year-old into a timeout, as wonderful as it would be if you could, go to your chair. But what that literature will teach you is not to reward the bad behavior that you don't want anymore and to only reward the positive and good behavior.
I gotta say though, Dr. T, I mean, I just can't resist it. But guys, if you find yourself following Dr. T's very good advice, please take a moment to notice that in order to manage your relationship, you're actually reading a book on how to deal with spoiled little brat children. That scene, if you envision yourself saying, I'm going to get help for my relationship from how to deal with a brat. Let's see here. You might want to consider that isn't necessarily the best relationship to be in. I don't know, call me crazy, but I was just sort of thinking that.
Well, the reality is you can't have a reciprocal, mutual adult relationship with somebody who isn't emotionally and psychologically speaking an adult.
Yep, and that's true, and I think all the more reason for the detachment that we've been talking about, because detachment goes back to addressing the abandonment stuff. Detachment also goes right back to addressing the control, the fear of loss of control. If you're detached enough, you're not going to be intimidated or bullied or shamed or guilted or otherwise manipulated into taking control of your own life.
Right.
Nothing a borderline is less interested in is somebody who's actually in control of their own life and won't let go of that.
Well, and the reality is in getting away, right, and you're learning to have these boundaries and learning not to reward behaviors that are sick or damaging or hurtful, is you're actually borderline proofing yourself for your future relationship, and narcissist proofing and sociopath proofing, because they like an easy target. They want somebody who has diffuse or very few or no boundaries. They don't want to have to effort it. So if you have strong, healthy boundaries in place, they might throw themselves up against them a few times, but if they can't break through, they're going to move on and find someone who will let them bulldoze them and push them around and manipulate them.
That's it. Bully's always right. Okay, what is the next one? We've got, first we had abandonment, second we had control. Now what's the third of the 5 fears?
Feeling or appearing inferior or inadequate.
I'll start out commenting on that. One of my favorite movies of all time was American Beauty. I highly recommend it. Anybody interested in men's issues, please watch that. Lester Burnham was a personal hero, even though he didn't really exist for a long time for me. But there is this,
I can watch that scene where he blackmails the consultant over.
Yes. Over and over again, and the scene at the drive-through, and the scene where he's lifting weights, and about 50 other scenes I could watch over and over again. But that was a classic. But there's another scene in there where there are two young women with a friendship, and one of them is sort of an average-looking girl. The other one is like model pretty, and was in fact a model, very narcissistic, obviously personality disordered, and she was upset because her plainer friend was developing a relationship with this guy and trying to undermine it. And the guy, who played a very, very, very smart young man, when she started saying something about being special, he turned around and said, "No, you're not. You're terribly ordinary. You're plain, and you know it." And it just crushed her. It just absolutely shut her down. That lack of specialness, that lack of being remarkable to people, was what fed her, and without it she collapsed like a wilted flower. So I just wanted to throw that out there on that I thought it was a good example of handling that.
I think it's a great example. And that's the flip side of the feeling inferior, or the fear of feeling inferior or inadequate, often manifests outwardly as entitlement.
Yes.
Okay? And when they are feeling particularly inferior, inadequate, not like the specialist snowflake, whoever snowflaked, you'll see that entitlement rear its head. If you're a people watcher like I am, I see it. I hate going to airports just because they now suck. Well, they were never great, but it's like they have the opposite of German engineers trying to figure out how to make travel as uncomfortable as possible. But I digress. But you can watch people who, when they're having to stand in line or they're not getting service immediately, people, well, you can just see them getting ready to lose their shit because, God damn it, they're too special to be treated. I once dated a guy, not for long, who was so special that even though he often flew business class for work, he had a knee brace because, God damn it, Grandma wasn't going to get a seat ahead of him.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. An able-bodied, grown-ass adult was too important, right, to let the people in the wheelchairs and the women heavy with child onto the plane first. So that is it often manifests as entitlement, and when they are feeling inferior or inadequate, they will get nasty.
Dr. T, you've talked about the concept of love bombing before, and I think that that's related to this too. One of the ways that borderlines extract this adulation and being special is they literally shovel that stuff on their partner for a while, almost to the point that they're compelled to become, an echo of those same sentiments about the woman, so that she can hear over and over again how remarkable and special and different she is, and how people, always the warning signs is borderline will sit there and tell you about all the crazy shit they've done, and then tell you how people don't understand them. And if they really did understand them, there wouldn't be so many problems. You get that with all of them to one degree or another. And one of the warning signs to look for is somebody that met you 10 minutes ago and says, "You're the most remarkable man I've ever met in my life."
I could talk to you all night.
Make sure she doesn't.
No, usually the translation to that is they're the ones who are talking. So what they really mean is, wow, I could let you listen to me all night.
Yes,
okay.
That's precisely right.
And then of course people who don't know what's going on are like, oh wow, we must really be connecting. It's like, no, you're being a good audience. You're being a good audience and listening to this person about whatever. But
And
no, the
that's how
love.
men fall into that, Dr. T, is they'll sit and listen to a woman talk and she'll be animated and he'll think, wow, she's having a good time. This means I'm doing things right. And look at her, she's had, and then she throws a compliment at me every once in a while about how cute I am or how she could talk to me forever. That is how men are hooked in the easiest. And that is the very thing that should be a big red line.
It's how, yeah, or it's how a narcissist is hooked in, right? Let's talk about the borderline narcissist pairing. So if the borderline is raptly sitting there paying attention to the narcissist will lap that up like a cat with a bowl of cream. But in reality, they're both playing one another, okay?
It's like setting two TVs in front of each other.
Really shitty programming.
Yes.
But the love bombing is actually a term, I believe, that comes from literature on brainwashing and cults. Okay? Yeah. And so what happens is the recruiters for the cult go out and find somebody, because they know how to target people too. They want the vulnerable outsiders, the shy people, the people who don't have a very big support system, the people who are too nice to say, no, I don't want your literature. And they will drown you in praise, drown you with compliments, drown you with a feeling of specialness. Oh, I've never felt so strongly attracted to and sync with someone before. And then there's, you know, sex may be a part of that. So look, I mean, well, no, we're kind of segued from our original topic, but I'll finish this. You know, if you meet a woman who's telling you you're the most amazing person, or vice versa, that you've ever met, and wow, this is just, they're telling you that they love you in record time, and you're jumping into bed right away. And look, I'm not saying jumping into bed right away is a bad thing, but if you're looking for a stable relationship, that's not it. What you're experiencing is somebody who is trying to accelerate the building of rapport, the building of a bond, the building of trust. Right? They're drugging you with flattery, they're drugging you with praise, they're giving you the best ass kiss job you've ever had. Be suspicious of that, because that person doesn't really know you. That's impossible in that short of a period of time. And the love bombing stops. And once it stops, it doesn't come back, because the 3 stages of a relationship with individuals like this are intense idealization, then intense devaluation, and then they discard you.
And guys, if she's sitting there feeding you that line about how you're the most special man that ever lived, and oh, she might be in love with you from just this incredible 15 minutes of conversation, if you're eating that up, I would advise you to check the DSM for narcissistic personality disorder and do a little reading up on that, because
reading up on codependency, because it could be that you are dependent, and this woman or man is sensing that you've never felt very special, and they are going to suck you in, and then the next thing you know, you are going to be the nanny, babysitter, broom pusher behind the elephant. And if that works for you, great, but I advise against it.
And I think that's advice well pledged. So let's go, before we don't want to talk ourselves out of time here. We're at fear number 4.
Loss of resources. And as I said earlier, that could be money, social status, attention, whatever gives them a sense of security. So
we take from that immediately. Whatever resources, if you're involved with somebody like this, whatever resource you're providing, whether it's social standing, financial, familial, child care, transportation, anything you can think of, whatever you're doing to support this individual, stop it. Make them be a grown-up and take care of their own lives. And of course, we're not talking about here in relationships. People help each other through hard times. They do. But we're talking about normal crap there. We're not talking about a lifestyle of her manipulating her way into uh, uh, resources, playing with emotional games, keeping guys on a hook, and knowing how to do it expertly. I can't tell you how many guys that I have talked to that have been in relationships that were just the most blatant exploitation of them financially and in other ways, that to the point of ridiculousness, and they still don't have a clue what's wrong.
No, they think that they're desired for what's in their pants, and they are, but it's the wallet, and
Yep.
not what they're hoping.
Nope, that's the sad truth. That is, for a resources is better than, I won't even say that bad joke. I had a bad joke in mind.
I want to, look, when we're talking about somebody who has one of these disorders, I can't repeat it enough. We're talking about a profoundly emotionally immature individual who is very, in many ways, childlike. Okay? And children desire to be taken care of, to be protected. Okay? And that means oftentimes they become financially dependent upon their partners willingly. And then when you throw in their feelings of entitlement, because it masks their feelings of inferior or inadequacy, they also think they're too special to work, or too special to have to pay their own way, or too special to have to contribute in any kind of meaningful capacity to the relationship. And
Well, they contribute their presence and their needs.
yeah.
I'm here and I need shit.
That's like my dog contributing a fart on the couch.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I'll pick the dog over that.
Me too.
That's not such a bad idea. But again, this is where detachment comes in once again, rears its ugly head. When you look at how do you close off the attraction that a borderline has for you, it is with detachment. And you know what? A certain amount of detachment is very healthy in all relationships. It's really good not to be so wrapped up, because particularly, and this should be mentioned, borderlines are notorious for mood swings. They go from you are my rock of Gibraltar to you need to die.
But I don't see that as a mood swing. It's not a mood swing like a bipolar has a mood swing. They swing from love to hate.
No, it's not. It's a love to hate swing. So it's a love hate swing that they do, but that intensity of love or intensity of hate brings with it very different behavioral aspects that might as well be a psychotic break. For that matter, is that you get somebody that goes from loving you to wanting to destroy you immediately because she thought you looked too long at a woman who was on TV. I'm not exaggerating. There's guys that go through this shit all the time.
Again, if you treat this person like the emotional 3-year-old that they are, again, that's what 3-year-olds do. Daddy, Daddy, I want this toy. No, you can't have that toy. You just got a new toy last week.
Yep.
And then, I don't know, they're another toy, and all of a sudden, I love you, Daddy.
Dr. T, I think they could have cast you for Fatal Attraction. You did that. You did that too good.
Well, I do get a lot of recordings from my clients of their wives and girlfriends doing these things, so I have quite the database.
Career development at its finest. Okay, what about the last fear that we have on our list of the 5 big ones?
This is the one when it comes down to legal action that is probably the, I don't want to say easiest to leverage, but it's usually the one that is most effective, and that is the threat of public exposure for what they're really like. Because these people, again, they can be very superficially charming, very Jekyll and Hyde, often out in public. They will keep the mask on and people think they're just the most sweetest, loveliest people ever, or talented, charming, gracious, whatever. So if you are going to be divorcing, it is very important that you document. And you document for a while, because, and again, you can't bluff if you're willing to do this, and you keep it in your back pocket for when you need it, and you have an attorney do this for you, okay? Because that's you don't want it to come out as blackmail, but the simple fact of the matter is, when it comes down to getting a fair custody agreement, and I've seen this happen time and again, these individuals are deathly afraid of the garbage they pull in their relationship seeing the light of day. So if you have documentation of her breaking things, threatening violence against you, actually committing violence against you, if you haven't called the cops on her, doing things that are illegal, etc., you know, it's a talk between the two attorneys, which is okay. If she wants to go litigate, if she doesn't want to be reasonable, then all of this stuff is going to come out as a matter of public record. And oftentimes that is the only thing that has helped my clients get a decent custody deal, protect their assets, and get out as relatively cleanly and intact as possible.
And here is some words of advice about that too, because this is that last fear is the one, it's what I would call an action fear above all the others. It's something that's actionable on your part, that will take things to the breaking point to where they're going to go, has the most potential for that. If you are in a high conflict relationship, if you're involved with somebody that you feel like either has a personality disorder or enough of the traits that it doesn't really matter, then you should be documenting every piece of dirt that you can. Everything. Any little scrap of anything that's embarrassing, anything that's illegal, anything that is usable against this person, because frequently with these people it comes down to having to go that direction. And so if you spend 6 months thinking about leaving, don't do that without spending 6 months gathering data. Keep doing whatever you have to do to keep it hidden, to keep duplicates of it, to make sure it can't be sabotaged. And then when push comes to shove, use it. And use it with vigor.
Within the bounds of the law. Okay.
Yes. Oh, absolutely within the bounds of the law. I mean, you break the law, then you help them destroy you. Right. So there's absolutely no point in that. But if there's things that, and you learn about people being with them, whether they're borderline or not, you learn things that their family don't know about them. You learn things all the time about people that they don't want other groups of people to know. You should have a complete freaking dossier on that by the time it comes to, push come to shove in a pitched battle with one of these people. And again, there is probably some people that say, well, I could never do that to my child's mother. I could never do that to her. I know she was wrong, but I just can't hurt somebody that way. All I can say is fine. Appreciate your resolve. Please don't write me complaining about what's happening to you, because you are asking for it.
Yeah, well, as I just said, I don't know if it came through, is get out the jar of Vaseline and bend over, because that's what's going to happen to you.
Yes, and be prepared to say thank you, because that is what's going to happen. And so, again, we're talking about extreme circumstances where, say, you've got an ex that is continuing to go to the court and harass you anytime she gets the chance, and it is involving your kids, and there's alienating behavior going on. If you have that dossier, and I'll even offer you a strategy tip. If I had like 7 bombshells on somebody's life that would cause damage, and I was in this type of conflict, I would drop the first one with no warning just to let them know I was serious. And tell them that I am prepared to go to the ends of the earth to see that everything that she doesn't want people to know about there is out there, or him, whoever the case may be. But I would make sure that, just for the sake of seriousness, that you drop it, and again, keep the detachment. When there's reaction to it, horror, everything. Don't scream and defend yourself. Just say, yeah, I'm going to do it again until you leave me alone. That is, to me, a better strategy than trying to taunt them with it or anything else. Just get it out there, let them know that you're serious, and let them know that you're serious about doing it as many times as you feel like you need to, until you get some compliance on staying away from you, or stopping with the alienation, or complying with your visitation, or whatever it is. I wouldn't hesitate. And again, you got to keep it legal, but this is not a game
Look,
for the weak of heart. It's not.
I want to say, and it's, look, don't feel bad if you're hesitating, or a lot of the guys I work with, a lot of the women I work with who are in this situation, would be like, well, gosh, I don't want this person to go to jail, to lose their ability to create income, to, whatever the natural, whatever the consequence would be of carrying that out in order to protect yourself and or your children. And if you're a good codependent, you will feel guilty about having a boundary in delivering a natural consequence. But what you have to understand is if this person has assaulted you, emotionally abused you, threatened you, is done criminal things to try to harm you, you operating within the law to deliver a natural consequences to the choices she or he made is not you doing something to them. It's not you being mean. They chose to do whatever it is they did, with the criminal behaviors or the just ethically contemptible ones. And life is full of choices.
Yes, and that includes the individual in this case who's being abused. Sooner or later, everybody has to take responsibility that it ultimately in life, I mean, you can be a victim, you can be hit by a car or robbed by somebody, or be a victim in many ways, but in interpersonal relationships, in most cases, there's no victims, there's only volunteers. And as long as you choose to put up with that, you're going to get it.
And if you don't make the choice to protect yourself, then you may suffer a consequence for that too. So, I get it. You don't want to have anybody hurt. You don't want to be the cause of ruining someone's career or publicly humiliating them. But what you don't understand is that if they could do that, if they can do that to you, they will, and they'll do that. Oftentimes, I mean, what we're talking about, if you have that kind of information that they don't want to come out, oftentimes what they'll do, try to undermine your credibility, should you be honest about them, is they will start a smear campaign about you.
What my experience has been is that they're going to play every card they have, no matter how this goes. I mean, they will do a smear campaign. That may be the shit test that comes after you start setting limits, after you start detaching. There's all kinds of possibilities for that. Remember, some places are easier to get into than they are to get out of, but it doesn't change the route out. You're going to have to, your high conflict personality is coined for a reason. They're high conflict. They're going to create conflict in the process, but ultimately you can get them out of your lives. And even if you share children with them, you can find a way to sever enough communication that they don't have to become a disruption or just an ongoing force of terror in your lives. And with that, I'm sorry?
That's called parallel parenting, which we should do a show on. I just also wanted to mention, we did another show on this back in the early fall, I think maybe in September, with a guest, Terrence Pop, where we talked about administrative violence. So if you want to learn more about this, we discussed aspects of this during that program as well. And none of this stuff is easy. It's not easy. I mean, in what we discussed in that episode I just mentioned, is essentially you have to adopt a "this is war" attitude.
Or you couldn't even adopt a "this is cancer" attitude. If you develop cancer. You're going to look at chemo, radiation. You're going to look at things that are really unpleasant if you want to have a shot of getting through the cancer. This is the way to look at this, that you're going to do things that you wouldn't feel normally justified in doing in other people's lives. And if there was another way that I knew of, and I can practically speak for Dr. T here too, in saying if there was a better, easier way with less harm and hard feelings, we'd be all over it. But experience tells me that there isn't any clean, efficient, painless way to it. If you got a bad tooth, it's got to be pulled, and it's just tough reality there. Anything else before we close down for the night, Dr. T?
No, we're over time. Do we want to mention the book again?
Yes, I'm going to mention the book again. Another shameful promotion. There will be a link in the low bar here in just a few minutes, or you can go to avoicefrommen.com. But I want to recommend pre-orders. They're going very well. Of course, we always want them to go better. This is the writing that Dr. T and I do and have done for years and years on the internet, and these programs and such as that, they don't pay anything. We would like to see some compensation for all this work, so we've written a book that it's all new material. It's not stuff you've been reading from us before, and it's a very good how-to guide. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. You can support our work and continuing these going mental programs and doing everything else we do, conferences and everything else, by sliding down there and get yourself a copy of this book. And even if you don't have a dysfunctional relationship, I know you know somebody who does, who could use it. So you could buy it as a present. But with that, I'm going to say good night to everybody, and Dr. T and I will be back next week with yet more solutions to crazy. Bye-bye.
Bye.